Right. 3 October 2023. And today I've got a very, very interesting discussion after the controversial Zimbabwe 2023 elections of President Mnangagwa has started to settle in, and he is basically implementing his game plan. And I want to show you what is happening right now. This is unbelievable stuff that is coming out of Zimbabwe in terms of the potential damaging effects of the Mutapa investment funds, which President Mnangagwa gazetted this week. And this is a very, very dangerous piece of legislation. This is the lowest level of looting that you can ever find in any country. And Mutapa investment fund is a danger to Zimbabwe. It's not something that is to be encouraged in any country. So basically, what President Mnangagwa has done is to take everything that belongs to the government of Zimbabwe and put it within the reach of looters. And specifically, all these parastatals that are going to be in the Mutapa investment funds are going to eventually fall into the hands of Zimbabwe billionaire, sanctioned Zimbabwe billionaire, Kudata Gure. And I'll show you in detail how this is going to unfold. And I'm going to show you why this is a very dangerous thing that is happening in Zimbabwe. And President Mnangagwa is walking down a dark road, a very, very dark road. And eventually he's going to get mugged down the road. If he continues down the road that is going, President Mnangagwa is going to get mugged on that road where he's traveling. So let's go to Mutapa Investment Fund. It was gazetted. It was formed by Mugabe in 2014 as the Zimbabwe Sovereign Fund. And Mugabe was a very smart man. I'm going to unpack for you the meetings that Mugabe had in New York with the Zimbabwean bankers tomorrow. I want to go down this road of banking and why Mnangagwa is unable to form new companies. So President Mnangagwa is unable to form new companies, and he has to continuously jump onto existing companies that were formed by Mugabe, and then he has to destroy them, or he has to hand them over to Kudata Gure. Kudata Gure, now I understand why he was sanctioned. A very, very dangerous man. If you look at what he has done over the past 3 years at NASA and at FML, at ZB Bank, at Nikos Diamond, he has grabbed all these companies away from NASA. NASA has been stripped of these companies, and they have been put under his behemoth of a company, which he has been building over the past few years. Now, what they've decided to do is to take the telecommunications sector, the farming sector, the banking sector, everything that you can imagine, the power sector, and all these things are going to be handed to Kudata Gure, and they are going to be handed through young David Mnangagwa, who is sitting in the Ministry of Finance, because the Mutapa Investment Fund is sitting squarely in the Ministry of Finance. It is controlled by the Ministry of Finance, and we're going to unpack this whole thing. So this is a looting scheme by the Mnangagwas, and particularly by Kudata Gure. This is going to directly benefit Kudata Gure. And when we look at POSB, right? So listen to me very, very carefully. POSB has got a wide network of branches, and they want to grab the POSB, which was supposed to go for privatization, if you're aware. And this is now going to go to Kudata Gure. Air Zimbabwe was supposed to be privatized. It's now going to Kudata Gure. Net One was supposed to be privatized. It's going to Kudata Gure. Telesom, which Mugabe paid 40 million for, is going to go to Kudata Gure. Let me give you the other company so that we don't give you piecemeal information. So if you go to the government gazette, The companies are National Oil Company of Zimbabwe, NOXZIM, Petrotrade, Net1, Tel1, Zimbabwe Power Company, Allied Timbers, Air Zimbabwe, Kotco, Wange Collier, Kotco, did you hear Kotco? Cold Storage Commission, Pure SB, National Railways of Zimbabwe, Ada Seeds, PowerTel, Telesol, Industrial Development Corporation of Zimbabwe. Do you get what this means? Industrial Development Corporation of Zimbabwe, which is supposed to be housing all these companies, is now going to be housed in a fund. So listen very carefully. This is a well-crafted looting scheme, and there is not much that Zimbabweans can do because they don't understand what is happening here. AFC, National Railways of Zimbabwe. So that is logistics, flights, railway, anything that you can imagine. This is now going to be within the reach of Kudata Gure. But you ask me, why do I say that? Why do I say it's going to be within the hands of Kudata Gure? Because what has been happening over the past 3 years, it's clear. Tagure wants to buy up everything in Zimbabwe. And this is a plan. If you look at the way that they've allowed certain provisions in this bill, the ability to transfer funds out of Zimbabwe, the ability to employ a CIO, a Chief Investment Officer, for 3 years, and a CEO for 5 years, the board that is appointed without any public interviews. This is one of the worst pieces of legislation that has ever seen the light of day in Zimbabwe. And this was orchestrated before the elections. This is the end game for President Mnangagwa, and this is the end game for the whole cartel that is operating in Zimbabwe. This is where these guys want to end up. They know that the time is running out, and they want to make sure that by the time that everything is run out, they've stripped all the assets of the country and nothing's left. For example, NASA is gone, PSMA is gone, all these big companies that you know, and there's nowhere in Africa where you can see a structure like what they're building here with the Mutapa investment funds, a true looting facility for the elites and nothing else. This is not a fund. There is no fund here. It does not make sense. If you look at what they've built here, it does not make sense. Let's look at somewhat of the things that they've done. They've taken companies, obviously, like I said, that were due to be privatized and put them there. Take, for example, Net1. Take, for example, POSB. This could have simply been privatized. But now they've put it under a board. And what happened to the funds that were there in the World Fund? What happened to the board that was sitting there already? What is going to happen to the funds? Because right now the funds can now be used. Before, the funds had to be used for a certain purpose. Now the funds can be transferred out of the country. And this is very, very interesting. Gurumatanga, one of the guys there in ZANU-PF, has confirmed that this. If you go to the Herald, you will see that they have confirmed that this is something questionable. And as I said to you, this is leading to Kudata Gure and Kuda Mnangagwa. Those two guys are going to play a key role. And now we understand why they appointed Kuda Mnangagwa as Deputy Minister of Finance. You understand why they, is it Kuda or David, when they appointed the other as the Ministry of Tourism. It's clear here. You can see Air Zimbabwe, you can see what they're doing in Victoria Falls. It's clear that there is a grand scheme to take over the Zimbabwe government. If you look at just what Tagure owns, CBZ, FML, ZB Bank, all these were taken from NASA. So NASA is the National Social Security Authority of Zimbabwe. They took those companies from there and handed them to Kuda Tagure. So ZB Bank was literally sent to Tagure in 2021. FML, similar. CBZ, similar. The biggest financial institutions in Zimbabwe, they've handed them to Tagure. And when you look at the actual reasons that they give for forming the sovereign fund, the Mutapa fund, it does not make sense. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to raise funds? If you're trying to raise funds, why put provisions for transferring funds outside of the country? or loosening the ability to transfer funds. Why have a CIO who only has 3 years tenure? What is the plan? Obviously, if you don't do what they like, if you don't sell, they wait 3 years and they chuck you out. The CEO, the appointments, they are done by the president. What does that mean? So this is one of the strangest pieces of legislation I've seen. And if you look at ZUPCO, you know what has been happening to ZUPCO. That is the buses that were supplied there. You saw the Mnangagwa family at Belarus dealing with the buses. So this is one of the things that is going to result in the absolute stripping of the national companies. The key national companies are going to be stripped and they're going to be handed out to members of the family. It will become very, very easy to sell. So I don't want to pass over that point. Selling these companies when they're in this Mutapa investment fund, you don't need to talk about privatization. You don't need public debate. They could simply brand everything Mutapa investment fund. And boom, when they want to sell anything, they'll just say Mutapa has sold this part, they've sold shares here, they've sold shares there. By the time you go and look, nothing left. This whole thing is gone. So Mutapa investment fund, to me, a terrible, terrible idea, a looting scheme, and the end game for President Mnangagwa. But it's a dark road that they're traveling. They're moving away from a hidden consumption to openly and without shame doing whatever they want, and no one is watching, no one is able to do anything, because Zimbabweans, as docile as they are, Zimbabweans are so scared to say anything. But this is a bad idea. Look at South Africa. There's the Industrial Development Corporation, massive. They are sitting on billions and billions. GEPF, the Government Employees Pension Fund, is sitting on billions of investments in the financial sector. They don't do this Mutapa thing that President Mnangagwa and the other guys are doing. IDC, they do proper due diligence. They've sponsored, they funded companies, some of them from Zimbabwe, companies like OK Zimbabwe. Most of the banks that you're seeing there, they're being funded by the IDC. In Zimbabwe, they fund nothing. And I'm going to touch on this tomorrow. And this is a very, very interesting topic. The government of President Mnangagwa has not done anything for the investment of anyone in Zimbabwe. If you look at the young guys who have come to Zimbabwe with ideas, nothing has happened. They've not been given any assistance to do anything. Contrast to Mugabe. And I'm going to unpack for you what Mugabe did. Mugabe was creating companies. When he started out, he did a lot of bad things, but Mugabe created companies. On the other hand, President Mnangagwa has not created any companies at all. If you look at the companies that he created, for example, the Women's Bank and the Youth Bank, it's so embarrassing they didn't even include it in this Mutapa fund of theirs. And let's look now. I want to show you something. When I tell you that Mutapa fund is a fraud, there are a number of parastatals in Zimbabwe. Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, Agribank, NASA, Zimbabwe Electoral, ZESA, obviously, National Railways of Zimbabwe, Air Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe National Road Administration, ZINARA. So all these companies, what they've done, they've chosen the choice companies that are profitable and cash generating, and they've left the broken companies. So take, for example, so we say Tel 1 is taken, Net 1 is taken, Teleso is taken. Did they take Zinwa? Yes, they took GMP. Dairy Board, they didn't take Dairy Board. They didn't take ZBC. Take ZBC, if you are such a nice guy. Mineral Marketing Corporation of Zimbabwe. They didn't take that because they already have it. They already have massive number of mines. Zimpax, did they take Zimpax? No. Did they take Pismas? Imagine that. Imagine if they'd taken Pismas and fixed it. So Mutapa Fund is not about consolidating or making parastatals of companies on the government better. It's about choosing and picking the best companies, putting them in a position where they can be sold freely. And obviously, the person who's going to benefit most is Kudata Gure. And the hint is on POSB. If you can see that Kudata Gure is buying POSB, and then it's also being put with Air Zimbabwe, with National Railways of Zimbabwe, with ZESA, with the National Social, sorry, with the, let's find the true one here, TEL1, Net1, Telesop. It's clear to you what's happening. They are planning a big heist and a prison break. Those are the two things that they're planning right now. This government is not about government. These guys are getting ready to make a run for it. This is what I think. They're getting ready to make a run, and by the time they run, remember Kudata Gure is generating billions from all the companies that he's bought. And you can be sure that he is not going to be able to enjoy that money in Zimbabwe soon. So they have to find a way of getting that money out of Zimbabwe. This is what it is all about. Mutapa Fund, a total fraud and not useful for any purpose at all. Now, let's look at the comments. I want to wrap this up. Tomorrow we'll talk about the banks. We'll talk about Mugabe's plan and how he met Zimbabwean bankers in New York in the 2000s. So this is something that I had first-hand experience with, a discussion with someone who met Mugabe in New York a few years ago. And as I said to you, you can blame Mugabe for a lot of things, but Mugabe could create new stuff. That is one thing that you must understand. In Africa, we've got many presidents. The only president that created something from scratch was Mugabe. Mugabe he knew how to use professionals. Whereas President Mnangagwa, he works with existing stuff, but eventually the people that he works with, they end up taking something that is existing, and that thing disappears. So this is the difference, and you will see as time goes on that a lot will come out here, especially with the Mutapa Fund, the disastrous appointment of relatives as ministers, including young Mnangagwa here, who is from 1989. In 1989, young Gambakwe was, what grade was young Gambakwe? I think young Gambakwe was from something. So this guy, if I tell him to come and run Gambakwe Media, he's not going to be able to run it. But he's running your country and your minerals and now a fund worth billions. This is exactly what is happening here. And we need to be honest with each other. A banana republic starts this way. So a banana republic, when you start off properly, you start with a proper country where things are functioning. And then you say, no, things are getting worse. And then things are getting worse. And then you have an election that is condemned by everyone. And eventually, you have an open disrespect of everyone. And then you have a banana republic. The next thing is the dark road that I'm telling you about. The next 5 years are going to be very, very difficult for young Zimbabweans. This is unacceptable. What these guys are doing, you cannot justify this kind of thing. And the guys have to stop. They need to find a way of going back to the proper road. The road that they're taking is very, very dark. Right, let's finish off with Ezra. Zimbabwe is not yet ready to move into the realms of the developing nations like Zambia, Rwanda, Angola, and among others. Was stuck in the 70s. I called Rutendo here. I saw Rutendo Benson. He was defending Mutapa Fund. And I called him to say, Rutendo, come here. I want to ask you questions. Because to me, this is a disgrace, especially the fact that it's sitting under young Mnangagwa's ministry. You know very well that Mtuli Ngube has got no say there anymore. So I think no one can justify this Mutapa Fund. Now let's go to Professor Jeb. Isn't Gabagwe praising Mnangagwa Kutivuchi? Right, I think we need to address this one. I never praised Mnangagwa and said Kutivuchi. What I said to you is, during the time when I went to Zimbabwe, there was a lot of construction taking place. people were coming to invest. Things collapsed in January 2023. And this is a fact. In one day, the Zimbabwean currency, as I was driving from Masvingo, by the time I got to Kariba, the currency had collapsed from 1,000, 1 to 1,000 to 1 to 5,000. I drove back to Johannesburg. When I got back to Johannesburg, the currency was 1 to 12,000 in 1 week. And this is a fact. And my brother Brian said that you can go and Google him. When the Zimbabwe dollar was 1 to 500, he said it's going to be 1 to 800. After 2 weeks, he said it's going to be 1 to 1,800. And it happened. Why? Because President Mnangagwa has got one big problem. And this is not an insult. President Mnangagwa does not create money for people. So people cannot make money under President Mnangagwa's government. There is no one making money in Zimbabwe right now who is a genuine person. The only people making money right now are gangsters and what we call those people and goons. You know, the guys who are hustlers. They make money. Normal people like you and me, including ZANU-PF guys, you will never make money in Zimbabwe because the economy does not have the structure for you to make money. The economy in Zimbabwe is structurally unsound. It's got gaps. So if you look at your retail sector, the supply chain is not complete. That's why you see that there's Pick and Pay, there's OK Zimbabwe, which is Checkers, there is Standard Bank, there's NetBank. Your supply chain is not correct, it's not complete. Your cell phone companies don't work, but they're not thrown out. You've got an eco cash as your bank, as your currency, and they don't want to have money in the ATM because they don't want traceable transactions. So everything is a black market in Zimbabwe. So under President Mnangagwa, no one is going to make money because the moment someone makes money, they think about how they can spin it or how they can take it out of the country. That's the two things that people think. So if you see a rich person from Zimbabwe, they are disgustingly rich. Even here in South Africa, I meet guys here who are so rich that they don't know what to do. But that wealth does not last. It's a hit and run wealth. Whereas if they created a structure, so what these guys need to do is to create some form of Hong Kong where things happen formally, and then the hustlers can stay in Harare, but they will never do it. They will never do it because they do not understand the benefits of building a proper economy. So the economy that you have under President Mnangagwa does not benefit anybody. We are going to go back to the same mistakes that Mugabe made, but they're not mistakes. It's deliberate, and it's unfortunate because people are suffering under this situation. Young doctors, young nurses, young teachers, young professionals, young soldiers, young police, all suffering in Zimbabwe. And young Gambako has to live in a foreign country for years, not for 1 year. I've lived in a foreign country for 1.5 decades. It's my 17th year now in a foreign country. Can you believe that? And I'm lucky that I'm able to fly to Zimbabwe once in a while. There are people who have not seen Zimbabwe for years. I see crazy guys on the streets who speak Shona, like they're sitting there with dreadlocks and they're worrying and shivering in the cold. They've not seen home because of this kind of behavior that is happening now in ZANU-PF. Looting sprees like Mutapa Fund, Mutapa Investment Fund, which is quite a disaster, especially given that it's sitting under the Ministry of Finance and it's served no purpose except to take money out of the country. So this is it. Bobby, I say, why is Mataga playing a role all of a sudden? Prime Minister and his deputy are quiet. He's ahead of them. Or who does he think he is? Things are crazy in Zimbabwe. This is after the rigging, right? And this is worse. This is more than rigging. What is happening here? This is theft. What Tagore has done at NASA with FML, with ZB Bank, it's unheard of. I can't believe what has happened there. 2021, you can Google it. He's owning FML, CBZ, ZB Bank. the biggest institutions in the country, they're in his hands. And I can't even imagine what else he owns in the country and who else he owns it for. So yeah, that was event. I do not hide my thoughts about such things. And if you know one guy who knows economics, it's me. I had one of the best economics teachers. And I also studied economics with one of the universities in the United States. And I also studied finance. If I sit in a room with Mtuli Ngube, I will whip that guy with I think Mtuli Ngube, when he formed Barbican Bank, I used to go there to his bank. I was a manager there at Trust Bank in Bulawayo, and I used to walk to Barbican Bank. And that was like one of the worst banks I've ever seen. No one ever used to walk in that bank. Like literally, you would go in the morning and there'll be no one. You go in the afternoon, there's no one. You go in the evening, no one. And then I wonder, like, how did these guys make money? And for sure, they never made money at all. The Barbican Bank eventually closed because Mtuli Ngube was doing derivatives, and derivatives is gambling. He used to have initially his office there by, you know, if you go to Bulawayo and there's this building called Obedimpov owns the building opposite, and there's a post office there where a lot of young people stand. Mtuli Ngube used to have an office there, a single office, when I was a student. And my friend Gresham was attached there. And so during lunch times, I used to go there, and Gresham was a mathematician. And they would be doing these derivative things. And I was wondering, one guy with one computer, what's going on? And 4 years later, 5 years later, the guy has a bank. This is the same thing you're seeing here. And these guys don't understand. The secret is in creating a proper banking sector. You want people to bank their money, get interest, withdraw money, and when they withdraw 100 rand, $100, right? A foreigner comes with $100 from his ATM. You want to take $2 from the foreigner's $100 as a charge. If they withdraw 1 billion, that means you've got 2 million or whatever, 200 million. That is your money that you're gonna keep. And then you start paying your soldiers, start paying your police. At the moment, what is happening is a disgrace. The Zimbabwe government not doing a good job at all. And they need to change. This can't go on forever. They need to change this, and they need to stop this behavior. It's uncalled for to put people through so much suffering. So I saw the CCC, they said they would do something about this. Someone has to block this, this bill or whatever amendment. It cannot go through. And people have to challenge ZANU-PF. People have to stop being afraid of ZANU-PF. They won't kill you all. If they kill someone, make sure there's another person. This is crazy. So make sure that it's brought to an end. Right, so that is it for today. And I've been enjoying talking to you every night. We'll be back tomorrow. Let's look at Mugabe's plan, how he managed to bring all those professionals around, and why President Mnangagwa keeps associating with the guys like the hoodlums from Canada and the guys who come and tell you tall stories about the city and all that, instead of finding proper professionals that can come home. Right now, no professional wants to come to Zimbabwe at all. They know what's going to happen. It's not going to end well. And this is where the Zimbabwe government is failing. The kind of guys that are around President Mnangagwa, totally not the right people to deliver. And look at Zida. Where is Zida in all this thing? When this Mutapa fund is being created, what is the role now of an institution like Zida when you have Mutapa fund? Think about it. Right, thank you very much for watching, and good night.
Kuno aho pano mama wanna get it nice I know pura meso I know pura tebe I know kaya marigi kama kwetu tikom Brengele.com usasaire Kambakwe uyo anotara mari anogaya mari garai mamunzwa paninyaya pano zvamunoda kunzwa zvinotaurwa pano madiko kumunzwa mugovane.com Kambakwe vanogaya